every year. It gets colder. Now let's see if we can't put some life into you. One of the Sylvan worlds. Beautiful and peaceful, as always. So naturally, I grew bored again. One of my older works. I must have painted that when I was in my late teens. I won't mess with this one, but I think I'd like to revisit this particular scene in a painting. Perhaps something that goes further back, to the beginning of the journey. Dragons and dreams. The dead walked in that world. They were exceedingly polite, but it still creeped me out no end. I prefer my worlds three-dimensional, thank you very much. One of my favorite worlds, vast and beautiful. It took me days to walk there, across treacherous song lines, avoiding discordants and bell strikers. Oh, Papa, trying to keep me here with wards and old magic. I must have been such a handful for him, and a royal pain in the ass. They wouldn't do me much good. Those wards are long gone. Why did you never come back to me, Mama? Were you really not able to find your way? Or did something else happen? Did you forget about us? Still so many worlds unvisited, so many universes left to traverse. But time's running out for me. There. Oh, yes, I remember that place. And that strapping Coruscant farm boy. It was an enjoyable 2 weeks. Until his wife returned. I had to visit Letok. I couldn't just let that mystery be. But the paths didn't lead me to them, or to that time, and I found nothing. Our bloodless king. Oh, he did not enjoy that throne, but he never complained. Not to me, at least. Even my endless teasing couldn't faze him. My dearest Kian, I miss our long conversations. I even miss how every single one of my jokes passed over your head. Now there's a face I haven't seen in a long time. I'll leave that hanging where it is. Not bad for a 7-year-old with no idea of what was happening to her and why she was having such vivid dreams. I'll leave them up. After all, Papa isn't around to tell me to clean up and bring them to my room. Brave Zoe. It couldn't have been easy getting caught up in events and wanting nothing more than a quiet, normal life. Hugsy. He's the only creature in this little world of ours older than me. Oh, dear old Hugsy. You're barely holding together. What's that, Hugsy? You miss Papa? I miss him too, old buddy. Now that my life's winding down, I feel like I'm just beginning to understand song lines. But at least here they are, charted and documented. Someone may benefit from my experiences. It's hard sometimes to separate my own memories from what I've read and heard. April's journeys are vivid to me, but also dreamlike. Someday, at the very end, maybe we will meet face to face before the cycle begins anew. This was April's. I'm not sure how that's possible or how it ended up here, but so much energy. Her chi is in this.
It's freezing out there. You should not have let me go outside. Brr.
You're a big boy. What imbalance were you thinking?
Fresh air. And I was going a bit stir-crazy inside.
You know very well it's not safe. Paths shift with the wind between worlds, and the song lines are fragile things at the best of times. One discord, and you could end up lost forever. Just like...
You worry too much, old woman.
Oh, old woman? Huh? You're no spring chicken yourself, bird.
Oh, bird me. I've survived worse. Anyway, time to dry my cold feathers by a roaring fire while I enjoy a saucer of sweet sherry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you. You can't.
What? I can't what?
Be here.
You're not serious. You're serious.
I'm receiving a visitor, and she mustn't see you. There'll be too many questions. Questions I can't easily answer.
And who, pray tell, is this very important visitor?
I will tell you. Afterwards. Go upstairs and warm yourself by the chimney. It won't be too long.
After all these years, I get no respect. No, don't say anything. It's fine. I'm going upstairs. Just don't expect me to come back down again later. Or ever.
I'm making shortbread.
Call me when it's ready.
Welcome, April Ryan.
And the story continues on, I suppose. Although, as of right now, as far as we know, that was the end of the Longest Journey trilogy. The story, as from what I understand, was supposed to be continued in either a graphic novel type game called The Longest Journey Home. It was either that or it was going to be another episodic game like this one. There weren't very many details that I could find about it at the time. But as far as I know, the game has been shelved for the time being, so if there was anything to continue the story, we may or may not get to see it. As far as endings go, though, this was not a bad ending. The journey along the way, there were a lot of dark, horrible things happening, and Dreamfall, the second game, there wasn't even really a good ending to have. None of the good guys really won. I mean, we lost April, Keon was arrested, Zoe was put into a coma, and like I had said at the end of that game, as far as we were aware, that was it. We didn't know there was going to be a continuation to the story. And as far as endings and like resolutions go, this was a good way to end everything. I mean, Zoe finally found her path in life, who she was. She was able to put a lot of things to rest that had been bothering her as far as her identity, and she seems to be happy with where she is. I mean, we don't know if she's still with Reza or if she was with somebody else, because they sort of leave that up in the air. The first time I played this, she and Reza actually broke up. Like, it was bad. They really, really heavily just broke up. It was not resolved by the end of the game, other than the fact that he showed up and he was himself again. I highly doubt they ended up back together after that, though. I mean, it's possible, but I personally doubt it. And the bit with Keon, I'm honestly glad they did it the way that they did. Having him be the pacifist king after having been, a soldier and a crusader going out and killing people just because he was told to, that was a great deal of, change for him to adapt to. And the fact that, at least in my game, because it does change depending on whether or not you take Liko with you to Gien, but having Liko at his side probably was a great help, in spite of the fact that Liko himself is very open about being aggressive and, a soldier and fighting. But the two of them, at least, again, in my game, bonded quite a bit. And I don't know, just me personally, if I had to have anybody by my side, it would be my best friend. And just me personally, given that they both had the conversation on the airship on the way to Gien about, who they love, and that they were similar in the fact that they loved in a somewhat unconventional way. I like to think that they ended up together in that respect as well, just because, I don't know, it makes sense to me, but that's just me speaking as a sad, lonely, over-romanticizing gay. The parts with Saga were a little disjointed, but they were supposed to be, quite honestly, but I do think it was interesting that we did get to see the spirit of the White Dragon early on when Saga was still a baby talking to her. We don't get to see whether or not the White Dragon is reincarnated again, because from what it looks like, none of the dragons that, at least the ones that passed away, none of them were reincarnated again, and that was kind of sad, quite honestly, because we lost both of the dragons of Stark, and then we lost the White Dragon, the mother, and then we lost the White Dragon, the daughter. The Blue Dragon, from what I understand, is the only one that's still around, unless it was killed as well, and I just missed that part of the story. But I do like the fact that this game basically begins and ends with Saga. Lady Alvane and The Longest Journey is Saga, as we saw in this last bit here. And her meeting with April gives it a bigger meaning compared to what it was when we first met Saga or when we first met Lady Alvane, quote unquote, as April in the first game. We didn't know who this old woman was. She just happened to know a lot about us and what was going on. And now we know why. Because she was us. And the fact that Crow was there too, I'm gonna sit here, and I've said this before, I'm a very emotional person. The scene where Saga finds Crow's body at the end of the dream vortex, I cried. I'm not even gonna lie. I was just an emotional mess over here, because when I first played through this, I had no idea that he was gonna come back, because you don't really see much of him in the third game, or in the first game, I mean, as far as him being with Lady Alvane. And it's also nice to know where Saga got her last name from. I don't know. Everything got wrapped up nicely, and I do enjoy that. But I'm going to be eternally curious as to what the longest journey home was going to be about, because, again, I couldn't find that many, concrete details about it. And I'm just going to keep looking and see if I can find different things about it and maybe talk about it in another video, because I'm going to write out some stuff and go over all 3 of the games all together from point A to point B, and just go over the different points that have been made that are consistent throughout all 3 games, because they did a very good job keeping this trilogy consistent. Obviously, given how much of a gap in time between the beginning of the first game and the ending of this game, there's going to be some inconsistencies popping up here and there, and some plot holes too. But hey, for what they did and what they had to work with, and for how long it took to finish this story off, they did an amazing job. I'm going to get into actual character descriptions and character rundowns in a different video as well, but I don't know. I wanted to give what few thoughts I still had at the end of this, after having spent all this time finishing off the game. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and the story itself I enjoyed. If this had been a novel or a novel series or a movie series, I would have enjoyed it just as much. I enjoyed the voice acting, I enjoyed the writing. Wasn't always a fan of the game mechanics. I'm looking at you, DREAMFALL, The Longest Journey. But I can appreciate them experimenting with different game engines and different types of gameplay. It just meant that they were looking to advance what they were doing, and they were taking things seriously, because they wanted this to be accessible to people even well after the game was considered a cult classic. I do think they made the right choice with taking out the combat. I think I have mentioned that before as well, because the combat in DREAMFALL was pretty awful. The facial animations in this game were weirdly not as expressive as they were in DREAMFALL the second game, which I think we can just attribute that to once again experimenting with a different game engine and having different types of character models, and trying to get more detailed with how they looked and how they moved as far as the bodies are concerned. But I really think that if I have one complaint about how the game itself looks, because the game is gorgeous, but it's the really dead, stiff facial expressions that really bothered me. There wasn't really any variety to how they reacted to the things around them. But that's just me coming at it from an artistic perspective. The story, the overall look of the graphics, the characters themselves, the voice acting, the different choices that you can make that change the way the story itself plays out. Even if the outcome is generally the same, the journey to the outcome is the important part. As with all three of the games, it's the journey. But this was an interesting journey, a very long journey, the longest journey. Even if it's not the longest game series I played, it really feels like it whenever you sit down and play all three of the games, one right after the other, and you have to record them. But I thoroughly enjoyed myself going through this story all over again, and I'm really grateful that everyone joined me, because this is a story that was a pretty important part of my formative teenage years and my young 20s. As someone who fancies themselves a bit of a writer, it really helped to give me a bit of perspective as to how to write a true beginning, middle, and end to a story. And with that, we will close the book on The Longest Journey, and maybe someday we will be able to revisit this one again and I will go through the different choices. But as of right now, I'm satisfied with my ending, and I hope that you are as well. Thank you for joining me, and have a wonderful day.